So now let's review the CRM 2011 attribute types in detail. The first type of attribute that we have is known as a single line of text. This is an example of the form that you use with the single line of text type selected so that you can see the format types that are available. We can set it up as text, which is the default, email, text area, URL, or ticker symbol. The single line of text is primarily for storing strings rather than large amounts of text, although it has a character maximum of 4,000 characters, which is primarily a SQL limit. It is stored as nvarchar parentheses x close parens and takes 2 times the number of characters in the database, i.e., if I have specified that the maximum field size and I fill the field up with 100 characters, that will take 200 bytes in the database. As far as the formatting choices or subtypes of the single line of text, you can have the default, which is just the single line. You can specify it to be an email address, which means it will be validated on input. And when you double-click the email address on a form, it'll actually open an email form using your default email client. You can have a text area, which would be for more of a multi-line text type of usage. You can have a URL, which is validated on input, but basically the validation is not all that specific, and a double click opens the browser and sends you off to this URL. Lastly, there's a ticker symbol, and a double click will launch the browser to go to Microsoft Money page and display that ticker. For instance, if you have the Microsoft symbol in the field and double click it, you will see the MSN Money page for that symbol. So let's take a quick look at the update form for an existing field. In this particular case, we're going to continue on a single line of text. As you notice, the display name can be changed, while the schema name cannot. I also have the option of changing the requirement level, whether or not this is searchable, whether or not the field will be audited, the description, which is just used for documentation, the maximum length, and IME mode. IE mode stands for Input Method Editing and is typically used for large character sets, such as Chinese or Korean. Option sets. Option sets are basically pick lists, which we can configure the values of. As you can see here, we have checked the box for Use Existing Option Set, No. So what that means is we can define this option set right here on the same form. But another option that we have is to choose an option set that is defined elsewhere, or a common option set, so that we can share it amongst multiple attributes. In that particular case, when we click Yes on this option, then we have the ability to look up the name of an option set from the drop-down list and also to choose an unassigned value or default value. Option sets are basically a pick list of options, and the data is stored in each record as an integer value. These fields require 4 bytes in the database. You can use a global or existing option set, or you can use a single use one that's defined on the form for the attribute itself. Each option in an option set includes a label, a value, and a description. The description is primarily for documentation only. It lists the options in sequence in the order added. However, you can alter the sequence and cause values to be moved up and down and affect the order in which they're displayed to the end user in the user interface. The sequence has no relationship whatsoever to the actual data value stored. So again, you can alter it as needed. You can optionally set a default value, but you can also choose to leave that open so that you can tell if anyone has attempted to put any value in the field or not. There's many examples of single-use option sets in the system solution or out-of-box entities that come with CRM. It's a good idea to take a look at how they're set up to get a better idea of how you might want to use them. So now let's take a look at the update form to update an existing option set that uses a built-in option set rather than a global one. Specifically, what we can change here would be the display name, again the requirement level, and whether it's searchable, and the description. But with an option set, we can also go in and change the default value, and we can update the different options as far as the labels, numbers, and descriptions. This is where we would go whenever we need to update any option set in the system that is not shared. Two options. Two options are basically an on-off field. It's actually stored in the database as a bit field. And basically, you have two options. Either no or yes are the default, but these can be updated, and they also can have their sequence changed. This takes only 1 byte in the database. The default options are 0 equals no and 1 equals yes, but you can modify these to be anything that you'd like. The list sequence defaults to no and then yes, but it can be altered, and it has no relationship to the actual value stored. The default value is mandatory, and so the default value is no out of the box, but you can change that to yes. There's many examples of this in the system solution, and when you output a 2-option attribute on a form, you can choose to display it as a drop-down list, radio buttons, or even as a checkbox. Obviously, the on value would be checked. So now we have the update form for a 2-options entity type. And as we go through what can be changed and what can't, we can start with the display name, the requirement level, being able to enable and disable field security, which is different from other fields that we've shown, because out-of-the-box fields cannot be enabled for field security, but custom fields can. This is a custom field that's been previously saved. I can also enable and disable auditing and update my description. Finally, I can come down into my options list, and I can edit my options and change them to anything that I need. And also change the default. Whole number. The whole number field actually allows us to specify more than just an integer. The default subformat of a whole number is in fact none, which means an integer field. However, we can also choose duration and time zone, as you see from the drop-down list below. Language is another option. Basically, a whole number is either an integer or an integer pointer to provided option list, and it is stored in the database as an integer. The duration option is in minutes and is provided as an overridable pick list, i.e., there's a number of options that you can select from, but you can also just type in the duration in minutes. It also can be displayed in minutes, hours, and days. Another option is the time zone pick list. This taps into a full set of time zones already populated within CRM. Lastly, the language pick list of languages installed for that organization is an option as well. Again, whole numbers are stored as integer in the SQL database and require 4 bytes. If the format is equal to none, the integer value can be restricted with a maximum range as shown here. Now we have the form for the whole number. Again, we can change the display name, requirement level, whether or not it's searchable, turn on and off auditing. Notice field security is grayed out because this is an out-of-the-box field. We can also alter the description, the range, and whether IME mode is enabled or disabled. We are not able to modify the subformat of this type.